Hi, my name's Dan Lamoon and I'm going to be teaching you a basic introduction on how to make a short digital film. So this is going to be coming from my experience, my background in filmmaking. I make a lot of promotional videos for businesses and I'm going to be taking that process about how you can incorporate that into them making a short documentary or some form of film about an area of interest that you're passionate about or you're involved with and you work within. Right, so these four main steps all connect with each other and it just allows you to make a really dynamic, interesting film which you don't miss anything out. And the planning is one of the most important bits because that's where you're looking at each of the other stages and thinking about what the film is, why you're producing it, what equipment you need in order to produce it, and really what the overall purpose of the film is and why people are going to want to watch your film and engage with that narrative which you're creating. Okay, to start things off, you've really got to think about the overall narrative. And this is, like with any storytelling, you've got to think about what's going to be engaging, what's the purpose behind in that film. So identifying a key topic and then something which you can elaborate on, something that you can be quite open to and see how you can kind of expand that overall story. You need to really think about listening to people who are involved with maybe that subject, that topic, exploring those different areas of interest, and that might then kind of expand in that narrative and allow it then to be more interesting, more dynamic. By looking at your own kind of experiences in relation to that, that might then open up some different doors about how you're then going to create then this really vibrant story that people want to watch and people want to listen to. A lot of the time you need to kind of reflect on areas that you might work with, that you might be involved with socially, places that you might have travelled to, just things that you find interesting, because generally when you expand on those and you talk with other people, that can create then a really good overall purpose, narrative to the film that you're going to be making. Okay, so talking about the planning and the pre-production, this is where you're really kind of creating your story and thinking about that narrative, about how then it can all come together. And often a really good way of thinking of that is creating a treatment. And the treatment's used on large-scale Hollywood blockbusters right down to small independent films. And it allows you to start thinking about the overall story and what the beginning, middle and end are. And then the more detail that you can kind of think about those, which is often quite difficult while making a documentary because you don't know exactly what the outcomes are going to be. But if you can start envisaging what somebody might be talking about, how then that might relate to another interview, how that might relate to another topic, then that's where you can then really start making a really interesting, dynamic film. From there, you can then start thinking about the characters of your film, so the different people about who you're going to be interviewing, how then that might relate to each other, how there might be a certain topic which is connected to somebody else's story. You then think about the locations, where that person might be based, where there might be some form of place which relates to the topic which they might be talking about. So that then allows you to start piecing together all of the different elements of what the narrative is, which then leads towards then the overall film. And the final thing on your treatment is just thinking about the equipment. Now obviously on a large blockbuster they've got a huge kit list, they've got hundreds of people involved. For you, you might just have a camera, a tripod. It depends on what level of film you're going to be producing. Now if you think about that before you go out on location, it just means that you're covering every ground and you're prepared to make a great film. Now later on in this presentation I'm going to go into details about equipment for you to be thinking about what it is that you need in order to make a great film. Okay, so while putting together your treatment, you've got to think about why this narrative is of interest. And here's a few kind of tips for you to think about the engagement, for you to think about how you're going to get the most out of the people that you're going to be filming, that you're going to be doing interviews with, and the overall story and what it's actually saying and what it's communicating. So being open and sharing your own personal situation will allow you to connect with that person, allow them to feel more comfortable telling you their story, their situation, what it is that might be quite personal to them, and you really want to try and open them up so that you get the kind of most out of them in order to make the overall film of interest. So by having empathy and asking open-ended questions, it will allow you to really build that rapport and for them to feel comfortable. And the more comfortable they feel, the more that they're going to tell you about that certain topic about that certain situation that they're involved with. Being convincing that this subject is of interest. Some people might be very connected, might be part of their day-to-day of what it is they're actually talking about. So they might not think that it is of interest, but you need to make sure that they feel empowered that what they're going to be talking about is of relevance and other people are going to want to hear their story. Identifying the subject and expanding on that. So there might be a certain aspect that you've identified with a person and they might not know exactly what it is that you're wanting to get out of that interview, out of the topic which you're going to be talking about. So work with them. Come up with questions, come up with ideas about how you can really kind of get the most out of them talking about that topic or subject. And by celebrating and encouraging them that this topic is of interest, it will allow them to feel really empowered. It will make them feel that they want to kind of talk about this story. And that's going to really allow then your film to be strong, dynamic, and for the audience to really engage with. So the main outputs from this, like I said, that empowerment, you want to make sure that the person being interviewed feels of value, that there is of something which they're discussing is meaningful and has actually got a purpose. And by giving them positive reinforcement, you'll really get the most out of them.